everything's fine all of the time.
Who are you?
My name is the Doctor, and your life is in danger.
I want you to be very careful and look to your right.
Brand new Doctor Who continues tomorrow at 6:50 on BBC One and iPlayer.
Your smart speaker is seriously smart because it can now access BBC Sounds. Just say, smart speaker, ask BBC Sounds to play your favourite music or podcast. You can even pause, rewind or restart live radio. Perfect. Listen on BBC Sounds.
Now, the BBC News at 1 with Jane Hill.
Today at 1, Donald Trump says he will appeal after the historic guilty verdicts in his trial for falsifying business records. The former US president tells supporters he didn't get a fair trial.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people.
I'm live outside of Trump Tower, where Donald Trump will give his first news conference since becoming a convicted felon.
Also today, a new cancer treatment. The first people take part in trials of a vaccine designed to stop the disease coming back.
If it's successful, then it's a medical breakthrough.
Another Russian strike on Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv, leaves at least 5 people dead. And special treatment for the first hippo born in the UK for 7 years.
On BBC London, hundreds of households in Surrey are told not to drink their tap water over fears it's contaminated. And D-Day stories we hear from 2 Londoners joining the 80th anniversary commemorations.
Hello and welcome to the BBC News at 1. Donald Trump has said he will appeal after becoming the first serving or former US president to be convicted of a crime. He was found guilty last night on all 34 counts of falsifying business records, only months before the election which could see him return to the White House. He is still allowed to run for office, even with a criminal conviction. Donald Trump claimed his trial was rigged. He'll be sentenced in July. Our North America correspondent John Sudworth has the latest from New York.
In a nearby park, his opponents celebrated.
Trump is guilty!
While inside the court, the former president was walking into history as the first ever to be convicted of a crime.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace.
But it was a jury who convicted him on the evidence. 34 counts of falsifying business records to disguise hush money payments to the porn star Stormy Daniels for the purpose, prosecutors said, of keeping her claim that they'd had sex from the American public just ahead of the 2016 election. The verdict brought only gloom to Mr. Trump's supporters, who were left repeating those claims of political persecution.
And they're afraid of a much more popular opponent, which they know will defeat them.
But this was a decision made by 12 ordinary New Yorkers, your fellow citizens. There's nothing political about that, is there?
I'm not going to say that the jury was tainted, but who knows? Who knows?
So despite the sense of despondency amongst the Trump supporters, it's all pretty good-natured here, although, as you can see, there's a pretty large police presence just in case. The bigger question, though, is what the reaction's going to be longer term, with America now in uncharted territory.
You know, you can't even see the back. There's so many people here.
What effect will it have on his election chances? Will it put those crucial undecided voters off or draw others to him? And what about the impact of his attacks on America's institutions, already intensifying in the wake of the verdict? The man who brought the case insisted the result was a sign the justice system is working.
And while this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors, by following the facts and the law and doing so without fear or favor.
Millions will agree with him and millions won't. Sentencing will be in early July. Mr. Trump is unlikely, legal experts say, to go to jail. But either way, one half of a divided country now has a convicted criminal as its candidate. John Sudworth, BBC News, New York.
And our North America correspondent Neda Tawfik is in New York and has been following the trial throughout. What's the reaction there, Neda, as America wakes up today?
Yeah, well, Jane, the reaction falling very much down partisan lines. To give you a sense, some of the New York papers saying Donald Trump guilty on all 34 counts. But the conservative tabloid, the New York Post, calling it an injustice and a political hit job. And there's no doubt that Donald Trump and his conservative allies are now in full damage control mode. They have been taking to the airwaves, to social media, to not only attack the judge, to claim that the jury was made up of liberals, but also to suggest that this is now about revenge, about a need to take back the White House. And Jane, what we have certainly seen is Donald Trump stepping up his fundraising. The latest email posing the question, is this even America anymore? Well, all that matters and what both sides agree on is that the election has now taken on even greater significance. Never before has a convicted felon represented a major party in a presidential election, let alone one as tight as this. And my colleague Namia Iqbal went to the swing state of Georgia and got the reaction of voters there to the verdict. Take a listen.
Wow. Guilty on all 34 counts.
All 34 counts. Oh, he better win now.
This was a group of American citizens that are his peers that have made that decision, and I believe in the system.
I think the people that support Trump will still probably support him, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are people that are going to always be on his side, but I also think that there are going to be people that are going to look at a ballot and say, are we going to elect a person that's considered a convicted felon?
Well, Jane, Donald Trump spent the evening here at Trump Tower, and later today he will hold his first news conference to discuss the verdict. It is a fitting location. It is a location that has symbolized his evolution from real estate developer to reality star to president and now former president to be the first convicted felon. No doubt he will be angry, defiant, and the lines of attack will set the tone for the next few months.
Thanks, Neda Tawfik there in New York. Thousands of NHS cancer patients across England are going to be invited to take part in trials of new personalised vaccines in what's being described as a landmark moment in cancer treatment. The vaccines are designed to prime the immune system to recognise and then destroy any remaining cancer cells after surgery, and so reduce the risk of the disease recurring. Our medical editor Fergus Walsh has the story.
Elliot was diagnosed with bowel cancer last year and has already had surgery and chemotherapy.
All right, Elliot, do you want to come through?
But tests show he still has fragments of cancerous DNA in his blood, putting him at increased risk of his cancer coming back.
Hello, it's here.
So he's signed up to a trial at Birmingham's Queen Elizabeth Hospital of a new type of treatment, a cancer vaccine.
I feel excited, I did a bit of research about the treatment trial itself. And if it's successful, then it's a medical breakthrough, a time of reckoning.
And this is the key moment when Elliot receives his vaccine, tailor-made in Germany by pharma company BioNTech to fight his cancer. He'll get up to 15 doses during the trial. So how does it work? Elliot's personalised vaccine uses the same mRNA technology as found in current COVID jabs. A sample of Elliot's tumour was analysed and proteins unique to his cancer were identified. The mRNA vaccine instructs his cells to produce these rogue proteins. The hope is this will stimulate Elliot's immune system to recognise and kill any remaining traces of cancer.
How are you?
Elliot is the first patient in the UK to get the bowel cancer vaccine. He's had only mild side effects, but will be carefully monitored like more than 200 other participants in the international trial.
I think it's really exciting. I think this is sort of a new era. The science behind this makes sense. This is one thing about this. My hope is that this will become standard of care. It just makes sense that we can have something that can actually help, in addition to help patients reduce the risk of cancer recurrence.
First one done. Thank you.
There is huge anticipation about the potential of personalised vaccines to treat cancer, but it all depends on the outcome of trials like Elliot's, with thousands more NHS patients across England expected to be recruited to similar studies targeting lung, breast and other tumour types. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
People in more than 600 homes in Surrey have been warned not to drink their tap water after tests carried out following a historic fuel leak. Thames Water said it was issuing the advice as a precaution. Let's get the latest from our correspondent Frankie McCamley, who's in Bramley this lunchtime. So what are people being told, Frankie?
Well, good afternoon, Jane. From the corner of a park and ride, which is about 5 miles from the area of Bramley, which is the area affected, in what can only be described as a makeshift water distribution centre. And as you can see, cars are steadily coming through. Thames Water employees are filling up the boots here of those 600 homes, households that have been told not to drink the water. They're filling up the boots because essentially they don't know how long this is going to go on for. Some people here are angry. Others say they're extremely frustrated. They've been raising concerns for years about the quality of water. Others tell me that the stream in the centre of Bramley smells like petrol. One woman has said to me that she doesn't think the advice has been clear enough.
There's a little bit of confusion as to whether or not we can even wash up with it. Can we use our dishwasher? I initially thought it would be fine to wash up with it, but actually maybe we're not. Because you worry about the long-term effects as well of having probably had low levels of petrol in our water for some years. It is worrying. I've had to put signs up over all the taps, do not use.
Well, Thames Water say that this is a precautionary measure following concerning results of elevated levels of hydrocarbons, which are found in petrol. It says this is linked to a leak at a nearby petrol station where works are being currently carried out to fix a water pipe there. Those works are expected to last for around 4 weeks, Jane.
All right, Frankie, thank you, Frankie McCamley. In Ukraine, 5 people have been killed in an overnight strike on the country's second largest city, Kharkiv. Germany has now joined the US in giving Ukraine permission to use weapons supplied to the country to strike some military targets inside Russia. That relaxation of restrictions are to defend the Kharkiv region, which has come under increasing pressure from Russian forces just over the border in the last few weeks. Jean McKenzie sent this report from the capital, Kyiv.
Russia is reducing villages in the Kharkiv region to rubble and gaining ground. The Ukrainians say they've been powerless to stop this advance because Russia has been firing many of its bombs and missiles with impunity, safely from across its border. Overnight, there was another attack on this apartment building in Kharkiv. At least 5 people were killed, dozens more injured. Olena's husband and mother are still missing. As NATO's foreign ministers met in Prague, more and more of them joined calls to allow Ukraine to use their arms to hit Russia back, until finally the United States, Kyiv's biggest arms donor, gave its green light.
They are hitting Ukraine with missiles, with artillery, based inside Russia. And of course, Ukraine must be able to hit back and to defend themselves. This is part of the right for self-defense.
There are serious limits to this self-defense. Ukraine must only use the weapons to repel the invasion in Kharkiv. It cannot fire into Russia from any other point along the vast front line, nor can it hit targets deep inside Russia. Since the start of the war, President Biden has been weighing up, on one hand, his support for Ukraine, and on the other, the need to stop this escalating into an even bigger conflict between Russia and the West. He's been nervous about how Moscow, with its nuclear weapons, would respond to this move. But as the situation on the battlefield has changed, so too have Mr. Biden's calculations. In spite of the restrictions, this marks a major shift, a new phase in this grinding war. Jean Mackenzie, BBC News in Kyiv.
US and British armed forces have carried out a wave of airstrikes against Houthi targets in Yemen in response to attacks on international shipping in the Red Sea. Houthi media has reported that 16 people were killed overnight and more than 35 injured. Our diplomatic correspondent James Landale is with me. What more do we know, James?
Jay, this is an often forgotten conflict. The Houthis, an armed group controlling much of Yemen, backed by Iran, have been striking international shipping since November. They say they're doing so to support Palestinians in Gaza. There was a flurry of activity and attacks in the new year. The UK and the US formed a task force to try and hit back. Since then, there's been a bit of a reduction in frequency, but in recent days, there's been an uptick. So overnight, we had the first combined Allied strike against Houthi targets since February. 13 targets in all, drone facilities, drone storage, missile storage, command and control centres. British warplanes, American warplanes all involved in it. And the Prime Minister said that it was very much carried out in self-defence to try and
In Wales, it's billed as the biggest shake-up for 30 years. Nick Savini takes to the trains ahead of a milestone in preparations for the South Wales Metro. And it's one of the biggest TV shows in the world. A Welsh actor in Bridgerton says the
campaign and all the party leaders are out and about, just over a week into the campaign for July's vote. We're going to be hearing from our teams travelling with all the major parties. Let's start with the Conservatives. They've unveiled plans to punish fly tippers in England by adding points to driving licences. They also say they want to evict disruptive tenants from social housing. Rishi Sunak will be in the northwest of England later. Let's join our correspondent Jess Parker, who is on the Conservatives' campaign bus travelling around. Clearly not on it right now. Explain where you are, Jess, and what's happening.
Good afternoon. I am on a farm in northwest England in Cheshire, and I just want to introduce you to some of the local residents. So these are some 7-week-old lambs, and they're getting ready to meet the Prime Minister. We understand that Rishi Sunak may even be bottle feeding them a little bit later during his visit here. But away from the lambs and to the politics, as you've been saying, the Conservatives have been announcing a crackdown on anti-social behaviour in social housing against repeat offenders. People could be evicted. And then on fly tipping, lower level offenders could find points added to their driver's licence. Here is the Work and Pensions Secretary, Mel Stride.
We will be applying a system whereby people can get points on their driving licences if they're found guilty of these kind of offences. And I think that's really important because, of course, almost all these offences use a vehicle of some form or another. And in many cases, getting additional points on your licence will mean losing your licence altogether.
Now, this policy would apply to England. Labour and the Liberal Democrats have essentially been saying that they think the Conservatives' record on these issues is woeful. Now, Rishi Sunak has, of course, been crisscrossing the country during this campaign, combined with some eye-catching policy announcements such as that on national service. But the Conservatives may note that it doesn't appear to have led to any sort of significant shift in the polls. And ultimately, that's the kind of cut-through they'll be looking for.
Jess, thank you. Jess Parker there, down on the farm. Well, Sir Keir Starmer is in Scotland outlining more of Labour's energy plans, including a promise to start work on creating green energy projects within months if elected. The Greens say that pledge doesn't go far enough. Let's get more from our political correspondent, Layla Nathu, who is out with Labour as well. Layla.
Jane, no farm animals here in the west of Scotland, but plenty of clear water between Labour and the Conservatives when it comes to the issue of energy. This is really going to be where policy differences come to light. Labour very keen to make this a central plank of their election campaign. They're promised to create a publicly owned energy company, Great British Energy, headquartered here in Scotland. That would invest in renewable energy. It's something they want to get going with immediately, they say. Why? Because they say they need to reduce Britain's reliance on oil and gas imports from abroad, something to get energy bills down in their view, to create the jobs of their future, Keir Starmer said, and to get ahead of the transition away from fossil fuels. That is what Keir Starmer wanted to talk about today here in Scotland, where a key battleground for the Labour Party too. Now, some critics, including the Green Party, think that Labour's not going far enough when it comes to its environmental credentials. Remember, there was that policy to invest £28 billion a year in green technology. That has been scaled back. But equally, the Tories and the SNP are accusing Labour of putting thousands of jobs at risk in the oil and gas sectors. Have a listen to what Sir Keir Starmer said today when he was challenged on that point.
The worst thing we could do now is do what Rishi Sunak is doing and put our head in the sand and pretend it's not happening. And I'll tell you for why. That's what happened when coal was coming to an end. And we are still paying the price in communities across the whole of Scotland and across the whole of the United Kingdom. I'm not prepared to let that ever happen under a future Labour government.
Now, Sir Keir Starmer was also followed here to Scotland by questions surrounding the fate of the long-serving Labour MP Diane Abbott, particularly because he was sharing a stage with his deputy Angela Rayner, who appeared to go further than him yesterday, saying that she thought there was no reason why Diane Abbott couldn't stand. The answer from Keir Starmer for the moment is that nothing has changed, no decision has been made, and Diane Abbott has not been barred from standing.
All right, thanks, Layla. Layla Nathu. Well, staying in Scotland, a bit further down the road, the SNP have been launching a plan for the economy. Their leader, John Swinney, has challenged Keir Starmer to produce an emergency budget if Labour wins the election to reverse what he called Tory austerity cuts. Our Scotland correspondent, Lorna Gordon, is in Glasgow. Lorna.
Yeah, the SNP's leader has been out campaigning here in Scotland's biggest city, and he came to a community centre here in the east end of Glasgow to set out his party's economic arguments. He told me a little earlier that he could do business with whoever ends up becoming the next Prime Minister, as long as they deliver for the people of Scotland. And he said that would mean ending public spending cuts, which, as he put it, had been inflicted on Scotland by the Conservatives, and that he believed, he said, would continue if Labour got into Downing Street.
I am really, really worried that the Labour government, in order to establish its financial credibility or whatever they're doing, are simply going to sign up to prolonged austerity. And as the First Minister of Scotland, responsible for enhancing our health and education services in Scotland, which are my absolute priority, I can't do that effectively if my budget is being constantly undermined and eroded by spending cuts from London.
Well, Mr Swinney's message to voters is that Labour and the Conservatives are, well, pretty much cut from the same cloth when it comes to fiscal policy. And he said that voters in this general election face a stark choice, and he would argue that the SNP is best placed to deliver for the voters here in Scotland.
Thanks, Lorna. Lorna Gordon. And finally to the Liberal Democrats. Their campaign bus is currently in the Hertfordshire area. They've been outlining their commitment to free school meals in England. Their leader, Ed Davey, has been at a school in Harpenden. Let's cross to Damien Grammaticus, who's following the Lib Dems. Damien.
James, Ed Davey's made something of doing extreme sports this week. His extreme sport today, baking with primary school kids here on a half-term baking course. Now, the Lib Dems on traditional geography and traditional political territory today. As you're saying, free school meals. Their offer, they're saying today, is to expand free school meals. And they ultimately want to say they want to do that to all primary school children. So Ed Davey gave us a few more details.
Well, our policy priority is to give free school meals to children in poverty. So we're proposing to raise a threshold of income up to £20,000. That would mean nearly 1 million children who are living in poverty would get a hot meal every day. I think that should be a priority in a cost of living crisis.
Now, they say that this could be implemented from this year by putting a tax on big companies buying back their own shares. It's an idea copied from the United States, so they say that could be rolled out, and that would be children both in primary and secondary schools in England. Labour already have that policy in Wales, in London too. The Labour mayor has it, but the Liberal Democrats think that this is something that they can offer that would distinguish them, with the aspiration ultimately to offer it to all primary school children. And just quickly, Sir Ed Davey, he has also been commenting on a couple of other things. He said on the issue of defections from the Conservatives, he said he wasn't talking, or the people he was interested in talking to were Conservative voters who he says he thinks are defecting to Liberal Democrats.
Of Germany. It was held by a fringe group headed by a political activist called Michael Steutzenberger. He calls himself a journalist. He's not a journalist. He's a former politician and now political activist. And he was attacked on to conclusions that he was against what the rally stood for, which was in turn against what they call the Islamization of Germany. But the German police are being very tight-lipped at the moment about his identity. They'll be going through his digital record, his footprint, his home address, his contacts, all of that. And they will announce, I think, later today whether or not it's classed as a terrorist attack or not.
All right, Frank, thank you. Frank Gardner. Slovakia's Prime Minister has been moved out of hospital 2 weeks after he was seriously wounded in a shooting. Robert Fico was left fighting for his life after being shot 4 times at close range in the town of Handlover as he greeted supporters at the end of a government meeting. The 59-year-old has undergone a number of operations and is now at home having nursing care at home. Now, the first hippo to be born in the UK for 7 years is getting VIP treatment at a zoo in North Yorkshire. The calf, called Aurora, had a bumpy start when staff became worried that her mother wasn't feeding her. Hannah Gray has been to see Aurora and hear about her progress.
Shut that. And then this is the little girl.
Oh my goodness.
Meet 3-week-old Aurora, a rare newborn hippo. In fact, staff at Flamingo Land say she's the first hippo to be born in the UK for 7 years. This is her mum. She's huge and appropriately named Godzilla. Common hippos are vulnerable to extinction, so the European breeding programme are delighted by the birth of Aurora.
It is so exciting to be this close to a little baby hippo, but it's been quite an anxious time for you guys here, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, amazing when she was born, but then after the first 48 hours or so, as much as Mum kind of wanted to, she wasn't getting any milk.
When she was just 3 days old, the veterinary surgeon found Aurora in a life-threatening state. She's now getting round-the-clock care.
It's a challenge, but now we've got a suckling onto her arm first, then slide the bottle in underneath. She's definitely getting the hang of it.
Come on, madam, let's have you. How does it feel for you as a zookeeper? Because this is a really rare birth to have happened at any zoo in the UK.
I'm just proud of the team, proud of Godzilla, and it's just amazing to be part of it. It's one of those things that you can tick off your list. You're going to get in your bath now. Thank you.
She's clearly growing in confidence now, and just look at how much she enjoys the water.
Watch your toes.
She was named Aurora because she was born the same week as the Northern Lights illuminated our skies, and her future is now looking bright. Guests at Flamingo Land should soon be able to see Aurora out and about alongside the other animals. Hannah Gray, BBC News.
Oh, terrific. Now, scientists have discovered what they believe is the earliest and most distant galaxy ever observed using NASA's powerful James Webb Telescope. This image, released by NASA, shows the collection of stars as it was 290 million years after the Big Bang. They're hoping the discovery will improve understanding of the origin of the universe. That takes us to a look at the weather prospects suitably. Here's Darren Bett. Hello, Darren.
Hello, Jane. I'm going to stick to our planet and the tiny little bit of it that we're on. And we've got some much needed drier weather on the way for the next few days at least. And many parts of the country have been enjoying some sunshine. Lovely view there in Lancashire, but not such a lovely view here in Suffolk, where across some eastern parts of England, a northerly wind has been blowing and making it feel quite chilly. And you can see from the radar, we've had some rain around as well. That is becoming confined more to the southeast corner of England. There is a bit more cloud in northern Scotland that could give 1 or 2 spots of rain. But on the whole, it is going to be dry. There will be some spells of sunshine, some areas of cloud as well. If you do get the sunshine and away from those northerly winds, it'll feel quite warm. But where we still have that cloud in eastern England, temperatures are going to be about 15 degrees. But that cloud will break up a bit overnight. Any rain does move away. Still a few spots of rain running across some parts of Scotland from that cloud. We'll keep some clearer skies across the western side of the UK, and here it could be a little bit chilly first thing in the morning, temperatures slipping away to 6 or 7 degrees. There will still be some cloud first thing, and some of that cloud that we've got in southeast Scotland, northeast England will just push its way into the Midlands and could give 1 or 2 light showers. Otherwise, it's a dry day. More sunshine in southeastern areas, some sunny spells for Northern Ireland, and a sunnier day in Scotland as well. And temperatures in the central belt of Scotland could reach 20 degrees, and it'll be a warmer 19 in London and the southeast of England. High pressure is keeping it drier, but the centre of the high is getting pushed away a little bit on Sunday. That's allowing all this cloud to come in from the Atlantic and bring a bit of a change of fortune. So we've got more cloud coming into Scotland and Northern Ireland, a few spots of rain perhaps as well. Dry for England and Wales, plenty of sunshine, particularly towards southeastern areas, so it's going to be a much warmer day here. Temperatures are likely to peak at a very pleasant 22 or 23 degrees. Still quite warm for northeastern parts of England, eastern Scotland, but it is cooling down under that cloud in the far northwest. And that cloud is just going to push its way southwards overnight into Monday, along with that weather front there. That is very weak, that weather front, so there's little or no rain on it. It is more cloud that's moving south. And then it's followed by sunshine in Scotland, northern England, perhaps Northern Ireland. Temperatures here probably reaching 17 or 18 degrees. Even with cloud in the south, we've still got temperatures of 19 or 20 Celsius. Now, the high pressure is getting pushed away, and that's allowing these northwesterly winds to come in. Stronger winds for northern areas on Tuesday, bringing in colder polar maritime air. There could even be a bit of winteriness over the tops of the Scottish mountains, but it's still 21 Celsius in southern England. Jane.
Darren, thank you very much. That is the BBC News at 1 for this week. And indeed, that is it from the News at 1 here in London. After more than 37 years, you may know the programme is moving to a new home from Monday. So do join the team in Salford from Monday if you possibly can. From everybody here on the 1 o'clock news team in London, it has been an absolute pleasure and a privilege. So thank you for watching every lunchtime. Right now, here on BBC One, it is time, of course, for the news wherever you are. Enjoy your afternoon. And from the London team, it's goodbye.
Welcome to BBC London. More now on Thames Water asking more than 600 households in a Surrey village not to drink their tap water after tests raised concerns over its quality. Residents in Bramley, near Guildford, have been raising their concerns for years about a possible leak in their water supplies. Alan Sinclair has more.
It's been a pretty chaotic morning here in the